What's going on, guys? We are live. We're back with another interview. This is going to be a fun one because a lot of the times the interviews seem to be based in theory, and I think this one is firmly rooted in practice. We got two guests on the show today. They have a YouTube channel. They've successfully lost hundreds of pounds together, and they've kept it off for an extended period of time. So our interview today is with Rachel and Joe of 2KrazyKetos. How's it going, guys?
What's going on, Matt?
Hey.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. You guys were on our podcast, the non-video format, about a year ago, I think. Really good, informative. Just, how to practically lose weight. So many people are struggling with that. So I thought before we dig in, we could just kind of go through your history and how you finally found keto. I know both of you were kind of off and on with other diets before you found one that worked.
Right. So for me, I mean, I've been obese my whole life, like from probably like 9 or 10 on, tried every diet in the world. I think the only thing I never tried was Weight Watchers, but literally everything else, Nutrisystem, Jenny Craig, working out, everything.
Yeah.
And I was always like yo-yo up and down. I think my highest weight was almost 290 pounds. I have no idea what size I got up into, but like I was squeezing into a 44. And I even know I had major medical issues, like all kinds of arthritis. And I even at one point had a blood pressure of like 170 over 110, which is stroke level. Mm-hmm. And I got into a weight loss bet at church. But the weight loss bet was not pounds. It was percentage of body fat, and started doing CrossFit, really enjoyed it. And then the CrossFit went out of business and we were getting a deal. So I was like, I can't afford like $200 a month for CrossFit. So what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I stumbled across keto and I loved it. I immediately jumped in and started doing it. Rachel kind of looked at it like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And she joined me about a month later, but I'll let her tell about it. But it's 4 years for me now.
Yeah. So CrossFit, you're probably were then familiar with like a paleo type of diet, right? Those two things seem to be pretty symbiotic. CrossFit,
a lot
paleo.
Of the people were doing paleo there. I was actually, because I have so many different medical issues. I have like pins in my ankle, and I had tinnitus in my wrist, and I have a dislocated elbow. So I was working personally with one of the trainers there. So he was modifying things with me, but he was more on the approach of like, I shouldn't eat a lot of meat, because I should eat very little meat because of my blood type, and that like I need to eat more of like plant-based proteins. So, I mean, he knew he was great when it came to working out and that kind of aspect, but nutritionally, I was just like, okay, I'm going to eat what I thought at the time was healthy.
Yeah, I ask because it seems like if you're familiar with paleo and stuff, your mind is kind of working in the direction of like, okay, this keto makes sense. But for certain people who are more just like trying different diets on and off, keto to them is just another diet, like, the no carb scheme to lose weight. Whereas someone who's done paleo before, it's more like, oh, this makes actual sense why this would work. This is foods that we're, designed to eat. So how about you, Rachel?
Well, I was on that opposite side where keto did not make sense to me, because I had been heavy my entire life and topped out around 260, 265. And I only knew how to calorie restrict. It was like it was feast or famine. That's like how you lost weight, was just don't eat. And it had been that way since I was a little kid. And when Joe started keto, I thought, I'm going to have to jump on board with this because I'm going to hate his guts. I mean, at that point, I was in like, a calorie restriction of about 500 calories a day, and was gaining weight because I was eating mostly carbohydrates, which is, a lot of times when you have a low calorie diet, that's kind of what's pushed. So it was very heavy on like big bowl of oatmeal, was pretty much what I was eating. Mm-hmm. So, I thought I've got to get on this with him. And, as we started losing weight, it was awesome. But what I started to find that was even more awesome was we started to gain mobility. And for Joe, even on our honeymoon, because he had a very debilitating car accident as, a young guy. And I mean, on our honeymoon, I pushed him in a wheelchair. He couldn't walk for extended periods of time, had to use like a mobile cart. Mm-hmm. And we were really moving through our 40s and looking into the 50s and thinking, what kind of quality of life are we really going to have? I mean, how much longer is he even going to be able to work? Because he had a very physical job. And we didn't have a lot of hope for the future. So, you know, as we were losing weight, we were actually like, no more arthritis for him. He started to be able to walk, and not just walk, run. He started, you know, officiating sports even more. And for me, it was like the same thing. I mean, we just started having an amazing quality of life. And I had also always battled anxiety, depression, things like that. And it was like all of my levels just leveled out.
Mm-hmm. So I was reading on your blog a little bit of your history. You successfully lost 100 pounds through calorie restriction, right?
Yes.
And then did you
gained it back?
Yeah. See, so that's really the crime of like the modern nutrition, or at least dieting advice, is like they give you the terrible advice on just how to lose weight in the short term, and they don't realize, I think they're good actors, but you're incapable when you lose it really quickly like that through calorie restriction. You're incapable of keeping it off in the long run, but you think it's just like a personal failing of your own, because your willpower suddenly went away, so you couldn't stick with the calorie restriction. But no one can stick with calorie restriction for extended periods of time.
So Rachel actually was calorie restricting for almost 3 years, but she was literally eating a bowl of oatmeal, like it was 1 cup of oatmeal, and then she would add a lot of extra water to make it, you know, like a lot of volume, and 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt. And that is what she ate for 3 years. It was like 500 calories
and I
a day.
Gained 70
and then she started
pounds
gaining it back.
Yeah. So what's the journey been like? Because I know a lot of people that are in that situation, then they start keto and they're like, I can't lose weight. Because obviously when you're used to eating 500-700 calories, it's at that point, it's tough. You're almost incapable of losing weight in the short term. So what was that like?
It was definitely, you know, just deciding that this is going to work and I'm going to give it the time. And I think we sort of just sat down and talked about, because he was experiencing such, you know, better health. He said, what if we gave this way of eating as much time as we gave the former way of eating? And of course, you know, you're talking about 40 years at that point. He's like, is it really fair for us to do this for 2 months and then say like, well, it doesn't work, and just keep going? Why don't we give it like a real try and be persistent about this? And that was it. Once we decided to stick to it and just say, you know what, we're not even going to worry about the weight. We're going to worry about how we feel, and we feel great. So just keep going. If you were to gain, you know, but you felt good. And that's kind of something that we share with people a lot of times. If you never lost another pound, but we're not on any medication anymore. It was the same for my mom. My mom was a type 2 diabetic for 20 years. And after my father passed away from a really surprise heart attack, we were like, you're getting on this keto thing. And she is no longer diabetic. There's no more medication. If you never lost a pound, wouldn't that still be worth it? Right. And it definitely was for us. And because we stuck with it, we saw the weight loss not only, you know, happen, but stay. And now I'm 3 years, he's 4 years in it, and we've been able to maintain.
I think the hardest thing to overcome when we got started was the whole idea that a calorie is not a calorie. I mean, like you talked about it in your vlog the other day, in your video the other day, where it's like, you know, these bad ideas like from Jillian Michaels and stuff, and where they're like, it's just about calorie restriction. A calorie is a calorie is a calorie. And it's like, it's hard to really get through your mind. There is a huge difference between 100 calories of protein and 100 calories in Oreo cookies. And because I can remember a time to like, well, okay, well, I'm allowed 500 calories, so I can eat like, you know, a hamburger and 3 Oreos or whatever it was. But there's such a huge difference.
I think it gets you in this terrible mindset too, when you're like crunching the numbers and you're like, okay, I can have this. And you're just kind of like thinking that through all day, especially if you're like most people that need to lose weight. You're very food focused to begin with, a lot of people. But what Rachel was touching on, which I think is a thing that I picked up on from interviewing a lot of people like you guys who have had success, is very rarely is like weight loss the primary driver that is for someone successfully losing weight. It's usually like, I had this health scare, that became the primary thing. I started eating healthy for that reason. Weight loss happened naturally. You'll get like the 25-year-olds who, like, you know, having a 6-pack is a huge driver. Like, it can be a powerful driver at that age, and then they'll be able to lose weight just through like sheer will. But for most people, it has to be better than like, I just want my body to be a little smaller. That's not a really good reason. So when you have like this driving force, it really seems to help. And then what is interesting is a lot of people think, it's tough to switch over to like a maintenance mode type of a thing after you lose the weight. So you guys have successfully done that. What's that been like? Uh-oh. I think they cut out a little bit. Hello, hello. Oh, you're back. Hello. Can you guys hear me?
There you are.
Oh, that was my internet.
You were saying something about me.
Yeah, my internet is unstable here. Let me know in chat, guys, if everything's still working well. I think it should be back. Can you guys hear me good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the question was, once you lose the weight, successfully switching over to just maintaining and like living a normal life.
Okay, so well, I have a very differing opinion than most people. I don't think there's any such thing as maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you're always either gaining or losing and experimenting with yourself. And I just don't think you're ever like at an equilibrium. I mean, you try your hardest, but I think we just did a video we put up the other day. I would talk about like the biggest thing to this is you have to be persistent. You have to be able to look long-term, and we're always tweaking things. So you may go up a pound or down a pound, but I think one of the things that we have shifted over to, which a lot of people have as more research has come out. Cause like when we got started, just like when you guys started, like, everything was like, you can't eat a lot of protein because of gluconeogenesis. And like, you're going to start creating glucose if you eat too much protein, and she'd only eat like 8 ounces a day. And so what we've started learning about is like more of like Dr. Ted Naiman's like 1-to-1 ratio, where if you can eat that 1-to-1 based on what your body weight goal is, you should be able to just maintain there and not have to worry about it as much. And it seems to be working pretty well for us.
Yeah, a lot of people lately have been talking more about Ted Naiman. We had him on maybe like 4 or 5 months ago. Mm-hmm. His whole thing is more of a higher protein diet. So my sort of philosophy, let me know what you guys think, is it is really good for someone who has done the initial like 3 to 6 months, I think, of somewhat high fat. I think the higher fat you do early on, the easier it is to become fat adapted, maybe a little bit more quickly. And
Definitely.
then to potentially lose more weight, feel more full from your meals, using more of like, he says 1-to-1 based on your body weight. So if you're or your goal weight, right? So if say I'm 250, I want to be 180, I would do 180 pounds of fat or 180 grams of fat, 180 grams of protein. So that comes out to like 65% calories from fat or so, I think. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think about that philosophy?
Well, I'm definitely in agreement with that. But what I wanted to say really quickly was when you get in that maintenance mode, let's say you get to that, weight or size that you're comfortable with, I think that you also, in order to maintain success and keep moving forward, I think that you have to deal with the emotional side to it, because it's not just that like gaining weight accidentally happened to me. I had a relationship with food. There's experiences that you have with food. There's connections to family and friendships. And I think that it's a good opportunity to just kind of dig in when you're in a better headspace. It's very hard when you're at the beginning of your journey to be like, okay, I'm going to deal with like, what was that all about? I feel like Chris Farley falling down the mountain, go, what the heck was that all about? But you have to face that. And I think that was something that always, kept me in this cycle of like not sticking to things because I never faced it. And I mean, down to thinking, I was talking to my mom recently about like a recipe that my grandmother had, and it was like very high in sugar. And I was like, man, I guess we're not going to eat that anymore. Like I'm losing that connection to her. And she's like, well, how about like you just have a card she's written or, something that was in her house, use this plate. Like you don't have to abandon your relationship, with your family history. Let's just find something more constructive to connect yourself to your family.
Right. Yeah. With your thing that you were talking about with like the 65%, I think a lot of it depends on what your goals are and your body type is. It's like one of the people who we absolutely love that we've become friends with is Robert Sykes. And, he talks about, he's obviously on the very opposite of Dr. Ted Naiman, where he's much more on higher fat. And I was recently listening to a podcast that he did where he interviewed Dr. Ted Naiman, and they're more similar than most people think, because, even he's like, you have to eat at least 100 grams of protein, but there's so many people on keto that are eating like 50, 60, 70 grams of protein, and then their hair's falling out and they're
Yeah.
wondering like, what is going on? And I think it depends on like, what are you trying to accomplish? If you look like Robert, you probably need to eat a lot more fat because you don't have a whole lot of body fat.
We don't have that
but
issue.
I definitely have a bunch of man boobs still, so I can afford to lower my fat content, just my fat a little bit.
There's still junk
But
in
depends
the trunk.
on what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But when it comes to maintenance, I also say that you need to follow like what Robert talks about, like on the Deeper State Keto program, which I know you guys like helped with developing, where once you get to wherever you want to be, you've got to reverse yourself back up. I think too many people say, okay, I hit my magical goal weight of 150 pounds. So now I'm going to double my calories and go back to where I want to be. And then in 6 months, they've gained 30 pounds back on. You've got to reverse yourself back up. And then you get to eat more in the end.
Yeah. That's a lot of people think of the journey, I guess, from like 300 pounds to 150 as just a linear thing. Whereas I think it should be more cyclical where like, you maybe taper your calories down over time, you take a little bit of a break, but people struggle with that. They like consistency. So the idea of like having a little more calories for a few days, that to them could be a little bit of a slippery slope. But one thing I've found is that over time, since I've been doing a keto diet for like 5 years now, I can distinctly remember back to maybe like 18 months into it, we did, and it's on our YouTube channel, we did a carb up experiment where for 1 day per week, we did like 300 grams of carbs. I wouldn't do it again. Really, really high. It was like a cyclical keto, trying it. And I did have a fear in the back of my mind that was like, this could be the beginning of the end, right? Like I could just go back to my old ways. And now I don't have that feeling at all. I'm totally in control. I know even if I were to go back to my grandma's house and she cooked me like her rhubarb crisp, which she makes. And the thing about rhubarb is it tastes terrible unless you put tons of sugar on it.
That is true.
So like if she made that and I ate it, I wouldn't have any sort of, thoughts that like this is actually going to, because I have such a strong foundation now and I know I can always go back. But about what you guys were kind of talking about, I was looking at your blog here, which I haven't read this book, but you have a little bit of a blog post on the psychology of overeating. And just talk about that, because the psychological aspect of this is a lot, which I guess doesn't get talked about enough. So what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, there's, we are I mean, it's not the case for everybody who's on a keto diet, but for us, we are absolutely carb addicts. And there's a lot that goes into that. We are addicted, no different than if it was alcohol or drugs. And, we have lied to get the food we want, snuck around to get the food that we wanted. And it's a real thing. And, different than other addictions, we have to have a little bit of our drug of choice every single day. I cannot live without food. I have to have a relationship with food. Whereas like if you were an alcoholic, you could be like, okay, never again, I'm never going into a bar again. But like, I have to go into the supermarket. I have to have a relationship with food and prepare it. And so I need to deal with that powerful addiction. And I need to not live in a state of dread and fear and feeling guilty, because there's a lot of guilt from the past, that of feeling like, wow, I was really out of control. And, it was you're basically a high functioning addict because we still held jobs and we still raised children, and yet you were an addict all along. So you look back and you think, we found ourselves like apologizing to our children. Like, I'm so sorry. Like we were out of control and I wasn't the mom that you needed me to be playing in the playground. And so we have to go through all of that. And I hope that we can be a blessing to other people that are going through that too, and kind of help them be like, you don't have to live the rest of your life feeling terrible for the life before. You can make a new start and we can have a healthy relationship with food moving forward.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough concept to figure out, because I guess like take me back to when you first started the keto diet, making lasting changes. Was it the food that started the change? Because usually the changes are widespread in someone's life, where it's like they do a lot of things. They're improving in a lot of different areas of life. Was switching to a keto diet like the first thing, or and I guess like what else did you change, or was it literally just your diet?
Well, for me, I had done Atkins years ago, and I had success on Atkins until a holiday came along, and my family was like, well, you can go off for just one day. And I kind of listened thinking, oh, I'll go back. But I hadn't had like any kind of bread or anything in 60 days. And now all of a sudden, like I became a fiend and couldn't go back. So when I got started, I think what really attracted me was like, it wasn't the rapidness. I think too many people look at the keto lifestyle and say like, oh my gosh, I can lose 20 pounds in a month. And it's like, remember those disclaimers on the bottom of all the like diet pills? Like that applies to keto too. Like, you know, usually it's because you were like way out of control and you drop a whole bunch of water and stuff. But what attracted me was the fact that it could be regular food. And, you know, that I didn't have to eat a special food. I didn't have to go to Jenny Craig. I didn't have to go to Nutrisystem. I didn't have to really worry about points. And that I can just start slowly with, you know what, I'm going to just eliminate the bread and the sugar and then kind of figure things out. And the knowledge wasn't out there, you know, there was no information then like there is now. I mean, back then, I mean, you had Dr. Berg a little bit, Dr. Berry wasn't even really getting started, and we had your channel.
Yeah.
You know, and that was really the only knowledge that you could get unless you started researching things from like the original Atkins and stuff. But it was really interesting. It started with just the food. And then as we kept going along, we started, okay, well, what else could we change? You know, like, you know, people ask like, well, do I have to buy grass-fed meat and like the pasture-raised eggs? We didn't. But what we started noticing was that as we weren't buying the junk food and as we weren't going out to McDonald's, we had more money for our groceries. And I look now is that we eat much healthier foods. We eat the $5, $6 a dozen eggs. But we spend less money on our food now than we did beforehand.
Well, and you know, when we were carbohydrate driven, you know, there's a real frenzy when carbohydrates, they really call the shots as far as like, I mean, you don't experience hangriness on keto like you do when you are carbohydrate fueled. And so not only did the brain fog lift, but I felt like I could make like choices for myself without the food determining what you're going to eat. There is no, you know, craving like there is when you're carbohydrate driven and you're like, I have to have this right now. And you have like a taste for something and you're like, I'm going to burn the house down if you don't give me that specific thing right there. So I felt like I was able to make calmer decisions and put off eating once we were fat fueled. I felt like, I don't know. I wasn't enslaved. Does that makes any sense? I felt like
total sense. Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I think everyone has the thing that keeps them sticking to it. I guess over time, though, sometimes you start questioning, like, is this really better? Maybe I'm just imagining some of this stuff. But for me, it was the like 2 p.m. crash at my job. I was just so tired after lunch, and it was so hard to get any work done. So, and I've always kind of been like trying to optimize and like figure some stuff out. And as soon as I realized like, oh, I'm probably eating 100 grams of sugar per day, that doesn't seem normal. Really what it is the approach that maybe doing these things that are so disconnected from our ancestry could be bad. Yeah. Like once, because I used to be so like futuristic minded. And I think a lot of people still are, where it's like, you know, give me the VR. I want the VR. Then I don't have to lose weight. We can just live in VR land, you know?
Right.
So it's like, that's one frame of mind. And I've completely reversed that, where I'm like, you know, there's a lot of wisdom in our ancestry. I will look for like little clips of people writing in the 1700s, just like what they thought about food. They have all of this wisdom that's just so intuitive to them. And then when you come to our modern day, we have this crazy stuff. Like you're talking about Weight Watchers counting points. And do you look back and now like, this is absurd? How would this make sense for a human being to lose weight by counting Weight Watchers points? It doesn't.
Oh, it's crazy. In fact, like I've been trying to track across a bunch of different apps like that. Weight Watchers actually one of them, to see like, you know, what is the appeal? Because I see that there's still a lot out there.
Do it, yeah.
And you know, people want that sticker. They want that blue dot. They want like, you did good, you stuck with it. And I'm wondering like, how can we as a keto community help to provide that for people and encourage them, you know, daily? Because I mean, Chronometer's kind of like, you know, it's not as fun. You're just like, you're seeing grams and it's kind of flat. So I see the appeal that I mean, especially for me, I'm one of those people that likes to check off a things to-do list and feel like you're super successful. Yeah. But I also see on different platforms like iTrackBites and Weight Watchers, they do not reward like any type of fat driven diet or high protein, and you're going to have every single day where you're not getting that sticker and you're going to feel very defeated. So I see people trying to keep one foot in each life, and you're going to have to choose, I think is the answer.
I could be totally wrong here. I think part of it is also passing accountability. So you pass it on to the diet. So if I'm doing Weight Watchers and I don't lose weight, Weight Watchers is the one to blame. And a lot of it is also like you get this framework and then there's free foods, and it's like I can totally just game this system as much as possible. And if it doesn't work, it's Weight Watchers' fault.
Yeah, Rachel and I talked about that because when she's like, I want to test something. And she's like, because I want my free thing. And I'm like, there's no such thing as free.
Zero.
There's no such thing as free. And I'm like, and it's like, you can be successful if you do some of those things, if you don't scam the system.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is most of us who are way overweight scam the system.
Right.
And so like, I look at like, if you get if an egg is a free food on Weight Watchers, that's an egg. But when you put it in the app, you could put in 12 and they all show up as free. Well, that just doesn't work. Yeah, so we scam the system. That's why we even talk about that. We talk about like net and total carbs, and that you've got to have a happy medium. Like when we first got started, there weren't a whole lot of processed keto foods out there. I think the only thing really out there was Keto Bar. Yeah. Unless you went to Atkins and stuff, but you didn't have so many things. So you didn't have all these companies playing with the wonky fibers like IMO, and now there's like lots more, and they changed the name so that we don't realize it's IMO. So we always tell people, if you want to follow a net carb protocol, fine, but put some kind of a total carb cap, because I, as the addict who wants to scam the system, can easily turn 200 net carbs into, rather 200 total carbs into 0 net carbs. Yeah. No problem. I can do that. And you're scamming the system and are not going to have a good result if you do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think like a decent range is, because there are people that comment on Instagram and stuff about how to the extreme they take it. But like I usually say 50 total, 20 net. That seems to be pretty reasonable to me. Maybe you fit in like 1 or 2 keto process type things in there and you're not going nuts. But some people, they will do like 100 total, 20 net carbs. Gets a little wild.
If you look like Danny Vega, you could probably pull that off. But.
Yeah, you can pull off a lot of stuff. So I guess moving on to what I'm interested in is take me to the origin of your keto diets and what's changed over time. You were talking about one thing that stood out to me was like buying grass-fed meats and stuff. And to me, that's something that people obsess so much over at the beginning. Whereas once you care more about your health, you just naturally start spending more money on food because you place value on that. And it's not just like this checklist that you have to have before you start. You should just get started and improve along the way. So not necessarily food quality, but just like what has changed about your diet over the past few years, if anything.
Well, we used to be super panicked about getting our fat in. That was definitely something. I can remember going to bed and like, you're like, what am I going to do with the rest of these fat macros? And literally drinking a cup of coffee with like 4 tablespoons of butter in it and just being like, this can't be right.
Am I doing it right?
Yeah, but like, I feel like I have to get more fat in. I can remember like eating a spoonful of coconut oil and just being totally grossed out. And I'm glad that we don't have to have that anymore, just because it's like, you can eat butter. Like I don't need to eat a stick. Right. Same thing with like keto treats. We used to live off of mug cakes. Like every single day we were making a mug cake. And now, we don't need that bridge anymore, which I'm really thankful for bridges like that. But I'm glad too that we can move on and try new things.
Yeah. So looking back, just real quick, because this is a question a lot of people have. Looking back on the whole, you guys have been successful at the diet for multiple years. Would you do things differently? Like most people will ask the replacement keto-friendly foods to begin with. Like if you're currently you have a really bad diet, does it make more sense to just go cold turkey or to have some foods like that are replacement foods?
That's an interesting question. So the way I know, like Dr. Cyrus talks about, like absolutely no, like you need to not have that stuff. My opinion is, I think it's good to have some of that stuff. And I hate that, like everything in moderation, but if you don't have alternatives, whether it be stuff in the store or like stuff you make at home, like all of your recipes for mug cakes, like your recipes got me through the first 6 months because if you looked at it like you were never going to have a piece of cake, and again, coming from the addict side of it, if I looked at myself and I'm like, I am never going to have a piece of cake again. I am never going to have a mug cake. I am never going to have any kind of a piece of bread or anything.
Future looks bleak.
I probably wouldn't have stuck with it. I mean, I did this to lose weight, and then I realized the health benefits, which is why I stayed here. But I think that having some of those things, so long as they're using good quality ingredients, it's good because ultimately you want to get people away from the sugar. And I look at like, so what is it? General Mills just came out with that cereal that everybody talks about. We did a review on it from that's being sold in Walmart.
Yeah.
The ingredients in it are actually pretty good. I wish they would take the word keto off of the box, because I think that that is a great alternative for every American, not just somebody who's on keto. Getting our kids away from the flour and the sugar and all of those kind of things. And that was like the way we moved our diet. We started off like Dr. Barry said, hot dogs and mustard. And then slowly over time, we changed things. And we did for a while go through like the whole, it's got to be grass fed, until we started realizing that most of the grass fed meat in the United States is greenwashed, unless you're going to a local like farmer and getting it. And so we shifted over to, we just want to make sure we're eating meat that, I don't care if it's grain fed, so long as it's being grain, like fed grain that's like non-GMO. And it's, you know, if it's fed a little bit of grain at the very end, bottom line is it tastes better, you know, but eating pasture raised eggs and really trying to look at ingredients more, like we won't eat canola oil and stuff like that anymore.
That's a big move that we made. So we eat so many eggs, we started raising our own chickens. That's definitely something new, like having our own backyard flock in a suburb of South Florida is kind of strange here, because we don't live on like a bunch of land, but that's been really empowering to see, you know, what we can do to be more self-sustainable. And I like that. I like that feeling of freedom. And I think when we first started, it was all about getting convenience foods that we could eat, making sure like we had enough foods that had a wrapper on them, because it's not fair that everybody else gets stuff with a wrapper and we don't. And I'm thinking, wow, that's really upside down in my mentality. Like that's not increasing my worth and me feeling good. What really makes me feel special is when we cook a meal, that there's something magical that happens within the family and everything. When you cook a meal and you sit down together, like some of my favorite videos that you guys have are of you and Theo and Mega, just like sitting around the dinner table, having real food, enjoying real food. And it's going to help him. Like, this is what I'm worth. I mean, you can see he's got the whole table spread before him. It's not like a Hot Pocket in a wrapper, like you're 30 seconds of effort, right? Like some of the things that you're cutting up for him and presenting him, there's a preciousness to that. And I think that we sold out to convenience when we really lost some of like how precious that we are. You know, and that's part of the ancestral eating, because there was an entire, you know, process of making that food for our ancestors.
That just made me realize, so like I know a lot of people obviously have some sort of resentment or blame on the way they were fed as children. I don't really have that, because I'm always thinking like it's the effort that counts, which you're kind of making me realize, because we do this stuff for Theo. I don't even think there's no alternative to me. So like it's not even really a thought. But like my mom would home cook meals all the time, but she just didn't have, you know, she'd use margarine and like, you know, the margarine spreads better than the butter, therefore I'm going to use the margarine. And it's just, but she at least tried. But yeah, there isn't a lot of excuses to be made for just like handing your kid a Hot Pocket, like no effort. Come on.
Yeah.
So,
and we don't realize what we're telling them with that. We think like,
there's a lot of
food on demand like that is, you know, that's the way that you tell them, like you're opening up a bag of, you know, cheesy poofs and you're handing the kid that. But there's something special of like, you know, I took the time, mom got up early, I meal prepped for you. Why? Because you're worth it. And I think we need to do that too, and take the time. Don't rob yourself of that, because, you know, and I think that's what we're dealing with is broken adults. It's always better to raise, you know, healthy kids that feel good in their minds, you know, because we work in kids ministry. And so we see that all the time. It's so much better to build healthy kids than to repair broken adults. And so that's a big part of our keto journey, has been learning how precious we are. We're worth the time to budget to like cook this food, and it will take as long as it takes. This barbecue, this brisket, it's going to take as long as it takes, but you know what? It's okay. I'm worth this effort. I'm precious.
Yeah. So you work in child ministry?
Yeah.
What is that exactly?
We work at a church in like kids pastors in a church in Parkland, Florida. And we have about 400 or 500 kids in the program, and it's awesome getting to feed into their life and just love them. And it's been a privilege, even taking out the snacks and things that they used to have to just get through, like, you know,
a 1 hour
session. It was like we had to give them Oreos, and you have to give them animal crackers or goldfish crackers. It's like for an hour. And instead we've replaced it with more fun activities, and then like trying to have more rewards that are toy based, or, you know, some other incentive. Because that's the thing. And I mean, even if you go to the YMCA or you go to, I mean, any kind of church, it's like, oh, you won something, like here's candy or here's ice cream. We're going to have like an ice cream party. Instead, finding alternatives has been very exciting for us, because, you know, we're not too old to learn new things, and we can bless the kids and the parents by giving them something other than a sugar ball on their way out the door.
Yeah. So something I've been thinking about a lot lately, not diet related, but, you know, just overall lifestyle and health, is these devices we have in our hands nonstop. And it was basically, I was reading a book, it's called Digital Minimalism, and it's about how people born after like 1995, basically after 1995, you had a device in your hands through the crucial phases of life, and just like way more anxiety, way more depression, suicide, all this type of stuff. So obviously it's a top of mind with just the way I raise my kids. Do you notice that with the kids in the ministry? Like, just, they constantly have to be checking their phone. They live on their phone. 9 hours a day is the average time on phone for like a weekend high schooler.
I feel very blessed that we are as old as we are, because I think that we help to give freedom to the parents by saying like, oh, that's because they're like, they'll be dropping them off and like handing the kid their phone. And I'm like, oh, they won't need that. So like, you can go ahead and hold on to that. And the kid is like, what are you talking about? But like, we don't do it that way. Like, that's not how we work. And even when we had our minivan and our kids were young, we never wanted to make it so that like we can't go to the grocery store without turning on that DVD player. Like, the DVD player is a great thing. And we're really glad for this new, you know, this technology where you could watch a movie on an extended family trip where we're going to go visit grandma who's 4 states away. You do not need this to go to the grocery store.
You know what I see these days, which I'm just like, what is happening there? The mom is driving, or the dad, and the kid is 14 years old in the passenger seat, headphones on, watching stuff on his phone.
Yeah.
It's like, this is insane. Like, how this is just not going to breed a generation of, I don't know what it's going to, like, it's going to have consequences. That's all I know.
I think we saw it coming, and with our kids when they were younger, and it was before, you know, every 4-year-old had a phone,
right?
You know, because our kids, you know, are a little bit older. Our youngest is 20, the oldest is 24. So, but we saw it coming. So we were like, you can't have a phone until you absolutely needed it, which was like the middle of middle school, where the teachers started requiring it. Like, to take pictures.
They require?
They were requiring it because the teachers didn't want to like make copies and stuff. So I remember our son coming home, and like 7th grade, he's like, I have to have a phone because the way they give us our homework now is they write it on the blackboard or on the whiteboard, and we have to take a picture of it with our phone.
What?
So that, I mean, it was like 12, 13 where we started letting them get a phone. But we also had rules. Like, we would go camping, and it was like, this is a no technology weekend.
Yeah.
And they would be like, what do you mean it's a no technology weekend? Like, it is a no technology weekend. And we also had rules in the house. Like, at 8 o'clock, you're turning your device in.
We collected
it. You're done with it. You can't have it. And we had the rule of, and it's going to sound like harsh for a lot of people, that you don't have privacy. So you're under the age of 18 in our house. Yeah. You hand us your phone, and if there's any deleted text messages or anything, like, you're going to lose it for a while, because we want to make sure that you're not always in there.
Walk me through the thought process on that one. That one I have trouble with. I'm not sure how I feel either way yet.
Well, well, first of all, we always collected things because I don't think anybody makes great choices with social media at like 11 o'clock at night. Like, I think if you're going to make a dumb decision, it's that. And then the other side of it was, they are a minor. So if they do make a really dumb decision at 11 o'clock and post a picture or receive a picture or something, it's not, they're not paying the bill for that. Their name is not on that phone. It's our name. Mm-hmm. It's Joe. Like if they receive something, a video, a picture from a child that they go to school with, maybe it's them, it's like their relationship going back and forth, but it's us that are going to be held responsible for it if later on somebody regrets something that they sent to them, or if everybody gets along until they don't get along. Like if I don't want something like the guys would break up with their girlfriend in middle school and then
but you're going to end up marrying the person you're dating at 14. That's what they're thinking.
Trouble,
It was just more about accountability for us. And because of that, we didn't have any issues. But I mean, the biggest thing was there had to be downtime, because I think too many of us, including us as adults, like you go to restaurants and you see a husband and wife or a boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're both like, their head is buried in the phone. I mean, we feel bad as food bloggers, and like we go out and like, you go out and like, oh wait, we have to stop, take a picture. You never eat a hot meal because like you've got to video it and stuff like that. But you feel bad because this is supposed to be our date time, but it's also part of our job.
I think you have to be just super intentional and just understand like that it's worth it, because behind the rules of our house, there were so many conversations. Like we've talked all the time. Our children always knew the explanation of why we're asking this of them, or why this is a policy of the house, and allowing them to have input. It wasn't like we just put the Thor hammer down and never discuss things with them. And we fully believe that like these important talks, like they begin at Theo's age. You're talking to him right now. When he starts talking and he wants to tell you about the cartoon that he watched, and he's going to tell you like the entire 20-minute, Winnie the Pooh thing, and you're just willing to listen, that is the beginning of every important discussion that you're going to have with him. And, because he's practice, it's a muscle that you are working out, the communications muscle. And so he will always just be in the habit of bringing things to you. And I think a lot of times we discount, you're trying to quiet that child that's like 5 years old, 6 years old, because like you don't have time for them right now. And yet later on, when they're a teenager or adult, you're going to want them to come with you. Well, you never exercise the muscle of like, we talk about everything and you can come to me at any time and you're never a bother.
Yeah, it's tough. I feel like it's getting tougher and tougher, but this is probably what people have always thought. So,
I would not want to have to raise a child.
I think it's more challenging.
I think it's a lot harder. It was harder for us than it was for our parents. And I think in today's society with everything, with the way things are in schools and technology and like, Big Brother looking at you, it's getting harder and harder and harder.
I think you have to be even more like
intentional
about like being low tech.
I think, no, that's something I'm thinking. I think you can look at it as an opportunity though, for the ability to differentiate is there even more so than ever before. So like if you have, a kid because everyone has the same experiences now. We all watched, Tiger King or whatever. It's all the same stuff. So if you're the person who hasn't watched Tiger King, you were actually like reading a book, you're so much further apart than you were in the past. So you can think of everything. You can kind of think of that has like a huge advantage also has its own disadvantages, I think.
Very true.
So just to end with, you guys have a new YouTube channel, and it is revolving around camping. Tell us a little bit about this and just like why you got into it to begin with.
So it's called 2 Crazy Campers, everything with K's, just like 2KrazyKetos. And we actually started because we used to love camping. And I mean, I was an Eagle Scout when I was growing up and everything, but we loved camping, but we live in South Florida and it's too hot down here to go tent camping, especially when you were 275 pounds. So we actually are pretty good friends with Chris and Miriam Bear, the owners of Keto Chow, and they had been talking to us about, like RVs, and we would always make fun of them like, oh, that's not really camping. And we looked into it and bought a pop-up camper and then moved it up to an RV, to a regular RV. But the whole thing is that we were overweight our whole life. And because of that, we spent a good portion of our life in the house.
Yeah.
And when we each lost over 100 pounds, all of a sudden we're like, we have so much energy. Like, why are we wasting it laying on the couch or sitting in bed watching TV or even playing a board game? It's like, there's so many things that are outside. So we bought the RV and we intentionally started every other week. We're going to go camping for like 3 days and exploring like all of the incredible state parks here in Florida. And it was some of the things that we've learned. Like, we can go bike riding for 10 miles fasted and not have any problem with it, or go on 5-mile hikes. And even when the temperature is 90 degrees. And so it just became this thing of, can we have another channel, which will talk about camping and RVing, but maybe kind of blend the two worlds, like bring people who were in a keto lifestyle and are getting more energy and bring them over to get outside, and then take the people who are in that over there and be like, hey, there's a healthier way that you can eat.
Yeah, because we were always in that cycle of like lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight. So like, what do you do when you get to keep the success that you had? Like, okay, let's go outside. And we've been really amazed at like how much beauty there is very close to us. And I think that's the truth for everybody. Like, there's a park by you that you've never been to before. And it feels like a totally different place. I mean, we will go a half hour, an hour away because we're really just like weekend warriors. That's what fits into our schedule. Yeah. But it's like you're someplace else, and it's just a really fun thing to do together.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess you camped a lot in tents as growing up and stuff.
I did.
You did? See, that's my thing, because I camped all the time. My dad is like, he could make it in the wilderness for a few months, you know, like he's that type of guy. And it never fully rubbed off on me, but we would go camping a lot. So I feel like the RV is a little bit of cheating to me. That's how I have it logged in my mind, but it's comparable. It's fun. You still feel like you're really camping.
It's definitely cheating if I look at from me growing up like in a tent. Like, you know, we went camping in a tent every weekend, and then 2 weeks every summer to upstate New York. And then I was also in the Boy Scouts. But at the same point, more than anything, you're getting out of the house. You know, it's like you're not living in the RV. I mean, there are ones that you can live in. There are people who full-time live in an RV. But when you're talking about going to state parks and campgrounds and things like that, the idea is you have a comfortable place to live, like a hotel room that you're there, but you can still have a campfire, and then you still get to explore things outside. Like, we're doing things that we have not done our entire marriage. We've been together for 14 years. We were never going for hikes and going down whitewater rafting, or not whitewater, but just like river rafting and kayaking and long bicycle rides. And we weren't doing that. So the RV has given us the ability to go someplace where we can just enjoy different parts of the country now. And like, we're going to take rides up to New York and stuff and see different areas.
Well, and there's things for different levels. So there are different, we've noticed trailers and stuff for people who want to be more rustic. Like, maybe it's just a trailer with a platform and a tent that pops up on it. If you want to, you know, have that experience all the way up to like super crazy luxury.
Yeah. The RV for us makes it so we can literally like pick up and go. Yeah. Like last weekend, Rachel's mom wanted to go, like, she's like, for Valentine's Day, can I go camping with you? So we literally, like, on Thursday night, booked the place, and Friday morning, 10 o'clock, jumped in and go, because everything is already packed up. And then we went kayaking with a 70-year-old woman.
Do you have like TV internet access in there, or what's in there? Like,
we have the portable internet, like a hotspot, because again, we have YouTube channels, so we want to live stream and stuff like that. But
different places have different like amounts, like the quality is different. And I have to say, sometimes it's so refreshing. It's almost like why people go on a cruise. There's sometimes we get to campsites and it's just sort of remote, and it's like, well, it's out of our hands. There's no internet connection. Sorry. I guess we're off the grid for a second. And, you know, secretly you're kind of like, wow, that just unplugged me. That's so great. Like, now we can just be focused on each other because that's all we can do. Like, sometimes it takes an outside influence to be like, you're disconnected. Like, sorry, it's just family time.
Yeah, we are definitely workhorses, and have learned one thing about ourselves is that because we have a YouTube channel and we do the kids ministry, and I do sports officiating in a small landscape business. If we are home, we are working. We will work 7 days a week. Okay. So the only way we could not work is to get away. And even if it's just literally going in an RV and then just going out in nature, it gets us away every other week. So at least we're taking some kind of time to decompress and enjoy each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to start getting into this more. Did you take the kids camping, and like what age did you start? That's kind of what I'm wondering.
7. They were going with
us.
Okay.
I think that it's probably different where you're at. Like, well, for us, South Florida, a lot of the campgrounds will have water access. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody was like a very strong swimmer. And
we have alligators too.
We have alligators.
Oh, okay.
I mean, not that they're an issue really, but because they won't attack you unless you mess with their babies. But yeah, like we just wanted to make sure that they would listen to what we're telling them to do, without question. Because, when they're 5 or 6 and you're around campfires and stuff like that, then there's a little bit of a concern. But we did find out that a lot of the KOAs and such, you're not even allowed to have a campfire. So it may be a good onboarding experience for even a younger person to participate in, because there are some things that you just don't have to worry about.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, this was a great chat. If the people are looking to learn more, and you got the YouTube channel, and I guess just briefly, could you touch on what kind of videos you make on the channel?
So we put up at least 5 videos every week.
Whoa.
So every Monday we have a thing where it's called Keto on the Couch, which we quickly touch on just like what happened for our week, but most of it is really devoted to our subscribers, because our channel is really about support. We want to be the support system that so many people don't have in their lives. The motivation, so we have a Facebook family group where people can share recipes and just pick each other up and share their stories and motivate each other. So we do that every Monday, where we read comments from people and answer people's questions from Facebook. Then we do recipes, we do product reviews, and we started product reviews because there were so many products out there. Like the thing that got us was avocado oil mayonnaise. You would buy like Hellman's or one of those. We bought it and picked it up and said avocado oil mayonnaise. And then when you picked it up, the first ingredient was canola oil.
Yeah.
So like we like to tell people about ingredients and stuff like that. And then we live stream every single Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then we also do like vlogs and like what I ate in a day videos. So kind of a lot of different things.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, definitely check them out. 2KrazyKetos with a K for crazy. And they also have the blog, which if you go to their blog, which is 2KrazyKetos.com, it has all their social links and everything. They got some blog posts on there and stuff too, which is great. And thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks so much for having us.